Today, I'm going to be showing you guys some tips, tricks, and early game builds for the brand new action RPG, Lost Soul Aside. Let's get into it. Everything I'll be covering today will go through acquiring the third weapon in the game, so if you have not got that far, there might be minor spoilers for the weapons. However, when it comes to bosses and story progression, I will keep this as spoiler-free as possible. So again, this will cover the first 3 weapons in the game. I have not acquired the 4th weapon, but I do believe that is a little too far into the mid-game for it to be considered early game builds. The final thing I want to mention before we get started is that I am very acquainted with action RPGs. I've played games such as Kingdom Hearts and other games such as Wukong, but I have not played a lot of games like Devil May Cry, so if I'm giving any tips or tricks that might apply to games such as Devil May Cry, I do apologize. This is mostly for a person who has a lot more experience with the RPG side of the action RPG. With all of that out of the way, I think it's time to get into our first thing I want to cover, which is what skills I think are worth investing into in the skill tree in the early game. As you progress through the game, you're going to be acquiring a ton of skill points. It is almost non-stop. Almost everything gives you skill points, from combat to treasure chests to secrets you find. Everything gives you the skill points that you need to level up. Your skill points do not increase. It is always 100. As soon as you hit 100 experience, you get that skill point. First thing I had trouble with was, what should I spend my upgrades on? If you haven't looked at the skill tree yet, they're not incredibly massive, but each weapon does have their own skill tree. So I just want to quickly cover a couple things that I think are worth picking up as soon as you can, as soon as you start acquiring some skill tree points. Let's start with the basics. So each weapon has their own skill tree. However, there are certain skills in the skill tree that apply to Kazer as a whole. Those are these character-specific points right here. They look like a person in every single skill tree. They all do different things, but they acquire, when they're acquired, they will apply to your person, not just this weapon. So the very first thing I would suggest you invest in before you ever even get access to the greatsword, when you still have your sword, is come down here to the bottom right and pick up your synthetic consumables, which has a 5% chance of not consuming any materials when crafting items. This isn't super great. I don't do a ton of crafting. However, what it gets you access to is the 5% increase to gifted energy, as well as a attack boost of 5. After that, you'll probably have a little bit more skill points before you pick up the greatsword. So I would recommend you come up here, you pick up Heavy Cleave, then Shadow Rend, then Burst Pursuit, and finally grab this Health Restoration plus 10%. I will go into a little bit more details on the actual skills that do attacks. However, I do just want to cover a couple that I think you should grab right off the bat. After you get access to the greatsword, which is at the end of the very first dungeon in the game, you get it right there at the end of the mountain. There's a couple that are very, very important. I had stockpiled about 20 skill points by this point. I actually had not spent a single one till I got the greatsword. However, I do think it's worth spending some beforehand. So what I would recommend you do is come all the way down here, take this bottom path up and around until you finally get to this damage reduction -5 skill point. Now, before you reach there, you're going to have the most important skill point, I think, up to this point. That's going to be the Arena Power Slots +1. What that's going to let you do is it's going to let you equip a second power on Arena. I think it's very important to grab. Having that second power just gives you a little bit more of an edge while you're fighting some of these enemies. Whenever you get here, you're going to have a couple just back to back. I would recommend you upgrade your greatsword and sword. Again, I'll be going over these because I think they're early game. You're going to be upgrading these before you ever get access to your third weapon. So I'd recommend you grab your damage taken -5, your gifted energy plus 5%, your stamina restoration plus 10%. This synthetic consumables doesn't really matter again. However, it's going to give you access to attack amplification, which is not going to give you a +5 attack. It's going to give you a +5% attack, which is significantly better than +5. After that, I went ahead and grabbed this attack boost for that additional +5. You also could grab this synthetic quantity, which gives you a 5% chance of crafting +1 more item when crafting items. Again, I don't do a lot of crafting. We'll get into crafting a little bit later, but if you want to pick that up, make sure to pick that up, as well as this damage dealt +5%. I waited to hold on to this because it does cost 10 skill points to pick up. You likely won't have access to this until the mid-game, but I do want to mention that I would recommend before you ever even branch off to any of the paths, you go straight down the middle and grab all of these greatsword abilities. I think they are insanely powerful. One that I did forget to mention is right here at the beginning of Greatsword. It's actually the first one you have to pick up. You get access to the potion pouch expansion, which gives you an additional healing potion. Again, I didn't mention it just because you're required to grab it to level up, and maximum stamina plus 100 here. Both these are really solid, but you have to get them to start at branching out to anything else before you can even get to these skill points. After those, I'd recommend you come back here into Sword. You can mix and match between Sword and Greatsword through a big portion of the game. I probably invested about 50 skill points into both Sword and Greatsword before I ever got access to the third weapon. But what I'd recommend you do is pick up your Trinket slot. Just like Greatsword, we're going to go down the middle. This gives you an additional Trinket slot. So here in Equipment, you can throw on an additional Trinket. I'll go over how you get the third one here in a second. After that Trinket, I'd recommend you keep going, get your another Potion Pouch expansion, giving you an additional potion. You then get another attack amplification for that plus 5% attack power. Then your crit plus 4 if you want to go for the crit build. And finally, this arena power energy recharge rate. I don't think either of these are necessary. Honestly, I think if you wanted to, you could probably just stop here at this attack amplification, especially in early game, and just start saving up for the pole blade. So basically, by the time you reach the lakes, I would say invest up to attack amplification straight down the middle for sword. And try with your greatsword to get all the way to the end if you can. This damage dealt amplification is huge, but more importantly, this attack amplification is massive. Those are all the base early game skills I would recommend. Now I'm going to quickly cover some of the early mid-game skills you can get from the pole blade here. You can see I actually leveled this up very, very far. So, just like the other two, sword and greatsword, the second you get pole blade, I do recommend pushing straight down the middle. By the time I got the pole blade, I had my greatsword and a sword pretty much to the end, so I was able to spend about 25 skill points on pole blade right off the bat. What you get from this, from going straight down the center, which is a little easier than the other two, is you get one more additional potion, as well as an increased stamina. You get this gifted energy plus 5%. You get another trinket slot, so now you have your maximum amount of trinket slots from the pole blade. You also get your crit damage and your attack boost, which gives a crit percentage and a attack boost plus 5. You go down and up, and you can make it here to the attack amplification, giving you that attack plus 5%, which again is applied to your whole character, not just when you use pole blade. After that, I actually came back here. I ended up going all the way down the center at first. I recommend grabbing this crit and crit damage. Again, skip over the synthetic quantity. If you do not want to craft, if you don't find yourself crafting, just grab these two crit chances because the pole blade has the highest crit damage of the weapons so far. So that's all the skills I'd recommend you grab. Again, right now I'm at about the halfway point in the game. I'm just about to pick up the fourth weapon, but I did just want to cover these baseline skills I'd recommend you pick up. Basically, if you skipped over all that, all you want to do, go straight down the middle, picking up every single one of these character upgrades that you possibly can, as well as the things that increase your maximum healing potions and your trinket slots. All these combos and special moves you can use, you're going to be getting later, you're going to be able to use later, but it's way more important to increase the damage dealt and all your base stats before you ever get into any of these cool combo attacks. The last thing I want to cover here in the skill tree before we move on is the actual skills that you see around here. So most of these skills either add something such as the Great Sword's Leaping Strike here, where if you press triangle after you're attacking, you will do a heavy slam on the ground. However, what you might not know, and what I didn't know for a long time, is actually these 4 skills down here. So these are your base skills with your attacks. We can look here at the sword. This is your Stabilizing Surge. Basically, this is when you press triangle, you unleash sword waves. This is your Pivot Step, which lets you move while dodging to adjust your direction. This is your Whirlwind Rhythm, which basically lets you do a slash, then rush towards the enemy. And this is your Tempest Fury, which basically lets you do some attacks to increase your attack for 2 seconds. Now, what I didn't know is these other things here. So if you press the triggers or the R2 and L2s, you'll see that there's different skills here. So for example, the Stabilized Surge also has Compressed Sword Wave and Air Blast Cleave. What I didn't know is that's actually up there in the skill tree. I kept wondering, how do I make it available? What am I missing here? So if I hover over, if I don't hover over anything, so if I go over here to the Greatsword, you'll see that none of these little tokens out here are actually highlighted. They're all just kind of gray. But if I say hover over this Tiger Style, or this, what's the base form? Yeah, it's called Tiger Style is the base form. You'll see that over here on this right side, both this Gale Style and this Overlord Style got highlighted. That's basically saying that if I want to change from Tiger style to Gale style or Overload style, it will highlight what it does. Now, what is that? Well, what I did here is I actually got it on the pole arm. So here on the pole arm, I have this suppression strike. I believe this is the base one that you get. So basically, while you're using your spinning strikes or whirling strike, which are two skills that you can pick up here. So this is spinning strike is just hold square to do a spinning strike, which is like an AoE attack. While you're doing that, your character Kazer strikes enemies and consumes or strikes enemies in a larger area, but moves slower. Well, there's two other versions. There's Dragon Might, which is the same thing. When you're using your spinning strike, you move faster and attack more frequently, but you consume more stamina. And finally, your Harmonic Rhythm, which is when you're doing your spinning strike, you strike enemies and consume a moderate amount of stamina. So basically, you can modify these attacks to do different things, either using more stamina or using a moderate amount of stamina, using more stamina but attacks more, or use less stamina but move slower, but attack in a wider area. So basically, these are just modifiers to your different attacks. They're all found up here in the skill tree, and if you're ever wondering where they're at, just highlight over it. You can see it kind of changes on my screen, which ones they are. So if you're like, man, I really like using this wind booster attack, which I've never used because I don't generate any tornadoes myself. But if I'm like, I really like that, let's see if I can change it up a little bit to do something like create 4 additional tornadoes, or do scatter shot to dissipate the tornado. So just play around with it, see which ones you like. I would say for the most part, other than your base stats, just kind of play around with these. The unfortunate thing is, as far as I've seen, there is no way to respec, at least during the main storyline. But again, you get so many skill points that if you just want to try it, go ahead, load into a save, choose a combo attack you want to try out, and then just give it a try. If you don't like it, go ahead and swap back. The next thing I want to cover is the arena power. There are so many different arena powers in here that all level up as you progress the game and find different abilities. And I just want to cover at least the 2 that I personally think are worth investing in early game. First one I want to talk about here is Stellar Guardian. The way Stellar Guardian works is you basically use it and you'll have these orbs circle around you for 30 seconds and they damage enemies on contact. So I can go ahead and just use this. You'll see I have these orbs spinning around me, which will slowly damage the enemy as I come into contact with them. It will drain the shield. It will do actual damage to them. It will basically just add an additional layer of attacks. So if I'm sitting here attacking, they're not only being hit by my regular attacks, but they're also being hit by these orbs. So I find this as just a passive ability. You do not have to worry too much about it. You can just kind of sit here and it's going to slowly build up the damage you're doing, as well as breaking the shield all the while. You can see here, it's not too much, but these orbs do about I'd say 40 damage per hit, which personally I think is well worth using, especially because, again, it's just a passive 30 seconds of a little bit more damage. The next arena power I would recommend, and actually this is the first one I equipped and it just clicked with me, is Mountain Break. The way this works is you slam down, creating 3 cliffs that basically deal a ton of damage to every enemy it hits. This is good for massive bosses as well as groups of enemies, because it can just clear some of the guys without shields in seconds, as well as doing a ton of shield damage and health damage to bosses. So you'll see here, I'll actually go ahead and just break him real quick, so that way he puts his shield back up. And I'll quickly show off this. Hopefully it lands. Sometimes it doesn't land if they're not close enough. But you can see there, his shield just regenerated. Let's go ahead and make sure, yep, we can break it. So I'll go ahead and just use this. We slam down, and it already broke him, doing about 2,000 damage. It's such an insane ability. Pretty much every time I have it up, I use it. Or if I know I'm coming up to a boss, I'll just hold off on using it until I reach that boss. And then you combo it with this. You can just break that shield even easier, get some insane stun damage, and just this one combo I've done over 5,000 damage. It's just, both of these, I think, combined, make for not only good ad clearing, but also good boss damage. That's what I look for in good abilities, is what do I not have to swap around? So if I have to change a build every time I fight a boss, especially in this game when there's a ton of them, and then change the build back when I'm just fighting regular enemies, I don't like to do that. I like to look for something that is good against both. And I think both of these are good against not only bosses, but also basic enemies. Now let's talk about some of the builds I'd recommend you use in the early game. So we'll start here with trinkets, because I think these trinkets can be held on for quite a while. Unfortunately, right now I have some on that I don't think you get early enough. I believe you get both of these way later in the mid-game after you have the third weapon. However, I do want to talk about a couple. First, I want to mention the Celeria's Keepsake. If you die enough times, you will end up getting all 3 versions of Celeria's Keepsake. Basically, what it does is it lets you take less damage and deal more damage. Personally, I've not put it on a single run in my entire Let's Play. If you're interested in checking my Let's Play and what I did, make sure to go onto the channel. You'll see not only in the description of this video, but you'll see an entire playlist where I've played through the entire game. But when you die too many times, you'll get the Celeria's Keepsake here. It slowly increases, and it only takes like 5 deaths, I think, to get this Keepsake 3. It's not too many, but I do want to say, if you're just having trouble with the game, throw on the Celeria's Keepsake. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a cheat code. You don't lose your achievements or anything. It just makes the game a little bit easier. Now, I would say the last one you get before end game or mid game would probably be this Bracelet of Valor. So let's just talk here down. The first one I think worth noting is this Bracelet of Glimmer. This, every time you trigger a perfect dodge, you increase your attack by 15 for 5 seconds. You're going to be dodging a ton in this game. You're constantly going to be getting your perfect dodges, which means you're almost always going to have that 15% or that 15 attack increase. I kept this on basically until I was at the mid-game point because it's so strong. I don't recommend Bracelet of Mastery. Golden Lion's Ring, if you are really, really good at the game, I recommend you use this Golden Lion Ring. It increases your attack by 30 and your crit chance by 20%. However, you take 50% more damage. Now, if you combo this with Celeria's Keepsake, which for me personally, I think as far as I've played is probably the best combo in the game, you would be probably unkillable. What it does is it increases your attack by 30 and crit by 20. But because of this Celeria's Keepsake 3, you don't take any more damage. You also don't take less damage. You just take normal damage. But then you deal on top of that additional 30 attack. You deal an additional 30% more damage. It's just an absolutely insane combo. Golden Lion's Ring plus Celeria's Keepsake. You'll be able to get 2 trinkets pretty early on in the game. So I recommend if you want to give it a shot, see how strong you are, throw these 2 on. The Golden Lion's Ring comes from one of the very first challenges you can find in the mountains. And again, Celeria's Keepsake just comes from dying a ton. The Ruby Necklace is the first one you can actually buy in the weapon shop when you make it back to the city. It increases your maximum health. I throw this on because I like to have my health increased. You can see here, I'll just take it off real quick. You can see in the bottom right corner, it gives you about 300 HP, which I think is a massive increase. So I do recommend, if you don't want to do this Celeria's Keepsake and Golden Lion's Ring, the combo I ran for pretty much the whole game, up to mid-game, was I ran a Ruby Necklace plus the Bracelet of Glimmer, making it so that way I perfect dodge, and then I get my increase to my maximum health. Now, what I'm currently running, again, I'm a little bit further into the game, is this Gemstone Badge because it increases my Voidrax Crystal Shards by 30%, basically making it so I level up quicker. I recommend throwing this on as soon as you get it. Again, you get so much Voidrax Crystal Shards from everything. Just throw it on to get a little bit more from it. As well as the Ring of the Assault, increasing your crit damage by 20%. You can buy this from the shop when you get back to town the second time. And then, of course, I keep the Ruby Necklace on still. I cannot recommend enough, though, Celeria's Keepsake 3 and Golden Lion's Ring. If you don't think Celeria's Keepsake 3 is cheating, and you have no problem doing it, throw it on. You're going to be killing everything. It's kind of insane. I can show it off here just exactly how much damage I do if I throw on Celeria's Keepsake plus Golden Lion's Ring. We'll just hop into this guy real quick. Yeah, this is a lot of damage really quickly. I mean, you saw how quickly I hit 3,000. If I just go take that off real quick, just take both these off. That was 3,000 pretty quickly. You can just look. I'm not doing anywhere near as much damage as I just was. I did it in 2 combos. I got to 3,000. I got to a little under 2,000 in 2 combos that time. So yeah, I mean, it is such a good combo. I highly recommend using that for your equipment. I'm not going to, again, just because I want a little bit more of a challenge, so I don't want to do that. Now, the thing you're probably waiting for, that I was waiting for a long time, the weapons. The easiest way to say this is every weapon is good and every weapon is usable. While you're playing the game, for the longest time, there are additional weapons you can get. You can see there are 48 total weapons in the game. I only have 10 and I'm at the mid-game. You're basically going to be acquiring a base weapon that's going to do a little bit more damage on top of a fire, ice, and thunder weapon. What I recommend you do is just figure out which of the weapon types you like using the most and using it. And then whenever you find an enemy that's weak to a certain element, just swap over to it. You can swap mid-fight. You can fully pause. That's why I'm in here. I'm in the training area, but it doesn't matter. If I'm in a boss fight, I can sit here and pause, go to my equipment, and change it out if I want to use something else. So if an enemy's weak to fire, I'll throw on Gold Rose. If an enemy's weak to lightning, I'll throw on Dawn's Rule. There is absolutely no shame in changing this. I think just find the weapon that suits you the best. It applies to the greatsword. You get 4 different greatswords there. One that does a little bit more damage, and one that has a little bit more energy, and then 3 more that have the elemental damage, as well as the third weapon, the pole blade, does the same thing. Now, the only thing I will mention is when you find that weapon type you like, I highly recommend that you just choose one that you think's good. Personally, I like ice the best. When an enemy gets hit by freeze, what they do is they take more damage. So what I would do, and I'll just demonstrate here on my sacred horns, is there's something called weapon assembly. The way weapon assembly works is when you go into your weapon and press triangle, you'll be thrown into this screen right here. And you can see all these little accessories you've been collecting throughout the game. Now, from what I've seen, these just drop from bosses. There's not like a way to grind them as far as I've seen up to this point. You just kind of collect them. They're very hard to miss as well. So just kind of go through here and see what they do. Now, something I had to figure out was what exactly they do. So we'll take this. We'll look here at these blue accessories, these phoenix feathers. So what you see down there below is that one of them has attack 5 and one of them has break 1.9. When you equip this attack 5, it's going to give your base sword an additional 5 attack. So you can see there on the left side, I have 46 attack right now. I throw this phoenix on, I have 51 attack. However, each type, along with that white status effect, has the blue status effect. So it has plume as well. The way plume works is that attacks against defense broken enemies gain a 10% gifted energy boost. And for every single plume you put on, that increases up to rank 3. So if I have 1 plume on, I do 10% more gifted energy boost whenever an enemy's defense is broken. But if I have 2 phoenix feathers on, it's now plume 2, which gives me 17% gifted energy. The best thing about this, if I finish and save, and I don't like using the snowy peaks anymore, I hop back in here, I just remove them, and then I hop back out and save again. Now, the reason I want to show that off is because there's a few I have found that are really, really good. A couple really good weapon accessories that I want to show off here. The first here is this sunlight buckler. This makes it so attacks against defense broken enemies gain a 7% crit boost up to 15%. I have 3 of them, so I now have a 15% crit boost to enemies that have their defense broken. Then you have the wolf head, which gives pretty much the same thing, and increases your crit damage by 8% up to 20%. Because I have 2 wolf heads, my crit damage is now an additional 14%. So I now have a 29% crit bonus damage to defense broken enemies. And then on top of that, I have a crown of thorns. Attacks against defense broken enemies gain a 7% attack boost. The reason I'm pointing these out is I would look for anything that increases things whenever enemies are defense broken. So crowns of thorn increase your attack when defense broken. You have the phoenix plume, which gives you more gifted energy when defense broken. You have the sunlight buckler, which gives you the crit boost when defense broken. There was another one, I believe. Nope, those were the only ones that I have so far. So yeah, I would recommend anything that does effects when defenses are broken, throw them on, because you're going to be breaking defenses all the time. This has been so far my favorite build. All of that combined with my 16% built-in crit bonus makes it like an almost 50% crit chance every single time, or it's a 16% crit chance, but then you have like a 40% crit bonus damage once an enemy's broken. I think it's really good. So just look for those things. Look for the things that basically you want to find a theme. My theme here is defense broken enemies and crit builds. So I recommend finding a theme. If you want to use mine, go for it. I think it's great. I do want to quickly highlight what each weapon type does, because I didn't know for the longest time, and I think sometimes it's a little helpful. Your sword is basically your basic damage dealer. It attacks fast, does a lot of ground combos, has some aerial combos you can do, has a little bit of range you can do with your triangle attacks, but for the most part, just your bread and butter attack. I enjoyed this for most of the early game, a lot more than the greatsword. Then you have your greatsword, which attacks heavier. It takes a lot longer to hit, does a lot more damage, though, than the light sword does, but almost exclusively ground combos. It has this, which gives you a little bit of damage reduction and does a little bit of damage. But the most important one, I don't know if I'll be able to show it off, but this is one of the best moves I found against some boss fights, is if you press triangle square, you do a counter attack if they hit you, and this has cleared some bosses for me. So if you're ever having trouble with a boss that just is hitting you too much, I recommend just trying the greatsword, do some of these counterattacks. Again, I do just want to really quickly talk about the pole blade. The pole blade is a very aerial attack. It hits a ton, but doesn't do a ton of damage. You can see here, we have so many aerial combos. It's really good if you want to just juggle enemies. You launch them in the air, do a ton of attacks, and then send them back to the ground. Now, the other thing they have right here is the Deadeye meter. As you attack them, you'll slowly build up your Deadeye meter, which basically, when you do ranged attacks by pressing triangle, does more damage. So you can see here, we're doing some ranged attacks, not even getting close to them, doing a ton more damage than we would otherwise. This is my favorite weapon in the game so far. I've had a ton of fun using it. This is my go-to. But yeah, just wanted to quickly show those off because I had a little bit of a harder time. I thought the greatsword was kind of useless, but as I was fighting some bosses, I found that this counterattack is incredibly useful, as well as this pole blade. I would actually say the short sword at this point in the game is the most useless, because if I ever want to juggle or attack fast, I just use the pole blade, and if I ever want to counter and just do a ton of damage to like groups of enemies, I'll just use the greatsword here. And with that, guys, that's about everything I wanted to cover for some early game tips and tricks. Again, there's a lot more in the mid and late game that I do want to cover, so if you guys want to see me cover some of the late game stuff, let me know in the comments down below. There's a couple things that I can just briefly talk about here with Liana. I don't find them very useful, but you do have Liana's shop here, which as you get the bookstore back in town, you'll have access to different potions that you can craft. Personally, I haven't found it very useful, but if you guys do, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know what kind of builds you guys use, as well as some potions, and if there's any tips you want to tell me. There's a couple things I still haven't quite discovered that I would love to know. And again, if you guys do want to see a late game video, let me know down below. And finally, if you guys did find this video helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We also have a brand new Discord down in the description, so if you guys want to join the community to make sure you don't miss any videos, I upload twice daily at the minimum. Make sure to join that Discord and let's say hi to me. And with all that, guys, I will see you all in the next video.